So within the first 2 minutes of flying this thing, I almost crashed it. And I can see how other people have crashed it. Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, my name is Big Ball Vlogs. I do reviews, news, everyday vlogging, and every once in a while I'll do a tutorial. If this video is educational or somewhat entertaining, please consider smashing that like button and maybe subscribing to the channel for new videos when I post them. So I know I don't normally do this, but I've switched into like entrepreneur mode, and I have to promote my website, bigballfpv.com. And I know I don't ask for much, and I totally appreciate those that have been riding since the beginning of Big Ball Vlogs. I promote my business through Facebook because I am pretty much unknown on Google searches and people don't trust me. So Facebook has shut down my link from my store to my Facebook page, Big Ball FPV, because I don't have that trust rating. I don't have enough followers for them to say that I'm a trustworthy store. So if you could go over to Facebook and click on or try to find Big Ball FPV and click like on that, I would totally appreciate it. Also, I have started designing my own t-shirts. Right now, they're FPV related. In the summertime, when I get into fishing and I get into motorcycle riding, I'll be designing my own t-shirts and putting them on my Etsy store. Link in the description below. So I got some pretty cool t-shirts right now for FPV. Go check them out if you want to buy one. I totally appreciate it. By the way, let me thank 23 Boogs for being my first purchase on Etsy. I really appreciate it, bro. Order is shipped. Next, let's talk about this thing. I wanted to do a full production video. I wanted to do a full production video on this, which was going to take me a couple of days. I finally got the second battery in. I got up at the butt crack of dawn to miss that winter wind that's going on out right now. It's like 23 miles an hour gusts. It's super cold out. So I got up super early to deal with the cold just to avoid the wind. And I got to fly this for 2 batteries. And like I said, in my first intro, yeah, 2 minutes, first 2 minutes, I almost put this thing into a tree. And I wanted to talk about it today because I know a lot of you are still trying to get this thing unlocked. A lot of people are going through the frustrations of trying to get this thing running. And you're going to get it out of the box and go out and fly it. And you're probably going to end up in a situation like a lot of these troll whiners about crashing their drone. And after flying it, I can totally see how people have crashed it. And I wanted to kind of talk about that and give you my tips on how you can set this thing up so that you don't crash it. So let's talk about my crash. How did it happen? I don't have it on video because I forgot to put SD cards in the goggles and in the drone. But what happened was I thought I did all the setup when I got it out of the box. I went through and did all the settings that I thought that I wouldn't want to use. And there's a particular setting that ties the roll axis and the yaw together. So when you're in sport mode or you're in normal mode, if you're pushing forward and you push left or right on the yaw, it will do a bank turn. And there are 2 options. There are small bank turns and large bank turns. And I thought I turned those off. So I went out to my test field. I had it in sport mode thinking, hey, I could never crash this thing in sport mode. It's not going to, allow me to flip a roll. I'm confident with this area. I know my lines. I've flown it a million times. And when I go out to do a turn at this tree, it did not turn and it just started sliding. And I'm like, why isn't it turning? Turn, 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 turn. There was a bit of a panic because this is a $1,300 drone and I could see the tree coming, and this thing flies really fast. In sport mode, it is a rocket. I could see the tree coming in the right side of the goggles and it would not turn, and I'm panicking trying to get out of that turn. And before I know it, I just saw a branch go straight center line through my goggles. So I absolutely just missed this thing ending up in the marsh that was below that tree. Now, why did it happen? It happened because, again, the assisted turning, I think, I can't remember what it's called, but it's called bank turn assist or turn assist or something like that, was on. So when you have it on, it does not turn like a normal aircraft. You don't have to touch the roll axis. You just got to keep it moving forward. But you have to give it an appropriate amount of yaw axis in order to make a bank turn. The more roll axis you give it, the more yaw axis you give it, the more of a turn it makes. And because I wasn't giving it enough yaw axis, enough tail, essentially, it was just making this big, huge, wide turn. And it just freaked me out and I almost lost it. So I wanted to kind of go through some of the settings that I found to be a little bit different between the DJI and the DIY drones and give you a couple of tips on how you can set this thing up so you don't make these mistakes when you go out and fly for the first time. So going through the settings, like I said, this is not your typical DJI camera drone. There are some settings in this that you won't have in your other drones, like that yaw, roll, tie together. You don't have those in your other DJI drones. The I guess, yeah, you kind of did, but you might not remember it. It was called airplane mode. If you've ever flown airplane mode, it worked the same way. Airplane mode was a drone feature that when you turned it on, the drone flew like an airplane. And all you had to do was keep pushing forward and give it yaw, and it would do bank turns and give you that first person view or FPV perspective. Like it would almost call a bird's eye view because you look like a bird soaring over top of the trees. That's what they put into this thing to kind of help you or assist you with flying. And I don't think that they should have, because it will give you sloppy best practices if you're trying to learn how to fly for the first time. You're not going to know how to do a complete accurate turn by using the assisted turning feature in this drone. It is something that you should probably want off as default, but DJI has it on as default. So if you get this drone for the first time, remember, go into the settings and turn off that assisted bank turn. I wish I knew how to get into the goggles and do a screen recording to show you where to get to it, but it's in control settings, and it says one of your custom modes, I believe it is the assisted turn. It will say large bangs, small bangs, or turn it off. Turn it off so that you can steer this thing correctly. Now, when it comes to acro mode, I didn't even want to dare to touch acro mode because this thing was acting a little bit crazy, to be honest with you. It was acting a little bit crazy. Compared to a standard DJI drone, there were things that were happening with this that at the beginning, I thought that it was broken. I thought that something was wrong with it, and I thought I was going to have to pack it up and send it back. Now, because of that, because it was acting crazy, I didn't want to go into acro mode, but I wanted to feel out acro mode. So if you want to try acro mode and feel it out, but don't want to end up crashing your drone because the stock settings are super sensitive, go into your control settings, go into your expo and your race mode, and then turn on attitude assist. What attitude assist does is it essentially gives you horizon mode like you would get on a DIY drone. You can give it all inputs. It won't flip or roll. You can give it all inputs, and when you let off the sticks, it will center itself. So it gives you more aggressive flight feel and characteristics. You can dive bomb. You can get some super hard turns. I don't believe it'll roll because I didn't push it hard enough to try it. But what I do know is it will sort of back off and level it out when you let off the sticks, which will save you in a situation where you may be getting a little bit out of control. It is unnatural for you to think, because you've flown a DIY drone or you've flown any DJI drone, to hit that little stop button. The stop button was on other drones was set up so that if you were doing what they call a flight mode, like your gimmicky like orbits or your rockets or whatever you want to call it, where the drone was like flying away from you and doing an autonomous movement, you can hit the stop button. It would stop that before it backed up into a tree. On this, they put it on the top of the controller where you would normally be reaching for your camera shutter button. And you can't think, if you're in a panic mode, to hit that button unless you've been in a situation where you're like, oh, now I know, hit that button. So that's not going to save you. I think switching over the manual mode setting to attitude assist will actually save you better than relying on the button to try to level everything out, putting you back into normal mode. Now, the next thing that you want to do, which is kind of difficult, I have to actually go out and play with it because there really is no graph to show you what's going on. The expo and the rates are all analog numbers. There's no graph to show you what you're getting when you change the numbers. So what I did was, seeing that in most videos people are having like oversensitivity, I turned my expo up another 25%. It comes stock at around 50. I turned it up to 75%. If it was going to be too numb, I would just turn it back down. Now, when it comes to rates, the rates are set at, and I don't know if it's rates, actually it was center stick sensitivity. It was set at about 120. And I said, so if it's set at 120, what's the minimum? It goes down to 0. So I said, okay, what's the max? Trying to find where the middle would be to get that stick sensitivity around dead center, a little bit numb. The max was like over 900. So it's at the lowest end of that setting, which means that your center stick sensitivity is probably really, really high, I think. I think turning it down may increase the stick sensitivity, because as I turned it up and I was practicing with the yaw, it seemed like the stick sensitivity went down a little bit. So when you go into your expo and rates, try to turn up the stick sensitivity around center so that you don't get that twitchiness. I only did it for y'all. Once I get a little bit better weather, I'm going to go out and try it on all axes and see if it gives me a little bit of better performance. Now, why do you want to do that? Because this drone in sport mode and in manual mode has a braking feature. DIY, you probably never heard of it. DJI, you know that. Most DJI drones with obstacle avoidance, or not even with obstacle avoidance, they all have a braking feature so that if you're flying along at like 50 miles an hour and you let off the stick, it brakes. Now, with most DJI drones, it will be able to be adjusted. So you could have it flying by and brake and it will just come to a slow stop. Or you could have it brake so that when you let off that stick, it would just literally bang like it hit a brick wall and stop. That's where this is set. It's set that any control that you give it, if you're flying around and you let go, it snaps back into center. And it snaps back into the center in a way that it gives it a little bit of instability. Some people would think that it will be like a prop wash. It's actually this drone trying to figure out what the hell just happened. It brakes so hard, especially if you're out flying in, like today I was flying in a gusty wind and I was following my line. And when I let up off of it, this drone went, and I was like, oh my God, something's going wrong. It's going to crash. It's going to crash. But it wasn't. It was just the braking mode. Now going through the settings, I don't see any way to change the braking mode. So you're going to have to gradually learn how this thing brakes and let off the sticks. I think they put the aggressive braking mode in it because this thing is so fast, you don't want it to come to a slow stop. And that was the reason that you can turn up the braking mode on previous DJI drones. I had a situation where I was out doing a little bit of a test and I brought it back to me in sport mode. And when I let off the brake, when I let off the stick, as it was approaching me, it shot back over my head about 15 feet and there was a tree behind me. And fortunately, it stopped before it hit the tree. But I think what they did with this one was they don't want to give you that that sense of security that braking mode will stop you. So they just put it at the maximum. And now when you let off the stick, it's just going to freak out on you a little bit. Got to change that. Got to change that DJI. What else was kind of surprising about it? Surprisingly, it actually flew pretty well. But another thing that's a little bit different from this drone and your typical DJI and your typical DIY is the fact that since you can fly this in manual mode, you can take the stick and prevent it from centering by itself. Now, how could that cause a problem? And I'll tell you how it caused a problem for me. I had it in manual mode and I was flying around at a specific altitude. No, actually, I'm sorry. I had it in sport mode and I was flying around at a specific altitude and then I flipped it into manual mode and my stick was on the bottom. So, of course, when I flipped it into manual mode, it dropped. Luckily, I was at a decent enough altitude that I kept it from hitting the ground. So that may have been crash number 2, but it is something that you have to be aware of. That stick not centering, if you're used to flying a DJI drone, can absolutely confuse you. If you fly a DIY drone, that setting where flipping from manual to sport and then having it around center and having it gradually go up and down versus drop fast and skyrocket into the air, it's definitely going to confuse you. So again, a lot of things that are different about this particular drone that are different from a DJI drone and a DIY drone are probably contributing to a lot of people crashing this thing. Like I said, I was confident that in sport mode, since I've flown, I don't know, a dozen plus, every review that I've done on almost every DJI drone, I thought I was confidently going to be able to fly this. I've even flown DJI drones in FPV mode and kind of expected this to fly like a DJI in FPV mode, which really any 3-axis DJI drone in FPV mode really still makes kind of flat turns. So when you do turns, it's really just doing this, but it uses the gimbal axis to give you like this FPV point of view or field of view. And you can't see the sides. Like it's tilting this way because you're trying to do a right turn and it cuts off anything on the left side. So yeah, a lot of differences between these two that you're really, really, really going to have to take into consideration before you get up and flying this thing right out of the box. Now, short conclusion. Do I like it? I do. I do like it. I like the feel of it. I like the dynamicness of it. I did my standard, I got a little radio antenna out there. I did my little radio antenna test where it's a cell phone antenna. I flew around the cell phone antenna to try to do the orbit and to see if there were any breakups in the communication between the goggles and the controller. Everything stayed at its maximum reception rate. I'm not too far away from it. It's literally right across the street. So everything about it is nice. And I like the way that it flies. I am kind of on the fence about it not being able to do some of the typical DJI gimmicky autonomous maneuvers or actions. I used to like quick shot modes. Quick shot modes, again, if you haven't flown a DJI drone, were these autonomous movements where if you push the button, it would do a droney. It would fly away from you, keeping you in frame so you can wave to the camera as it's flying away from you. Or it would do a rocket where you could lay on the ground. It would shoot up in the air as high as you wanted it to go before it started to come back down. It had autonomous orbits where you could lock in on you with tracking mode and circle around you. While you were riding a bike, it would stay circling around you. So I like that about it. And I think that this should be able to do it. But they took a lot of that out. I haven't found a feature where you can do still photos. Again, this is early release software, so this may come out in future software updates, firmware updates, but it can't do it right now. So those things I don't really like about it because it is an expensive drone. It's as much as I said in my other video, your DJI Mavic Zoom 2 or Mavic 2 Zoom, and that's probably a better buy for this. But if they could somehow put those features in this drone, this would be my most favorite new gimmicky gadget that I've ever bought. I love it. I like the way it looks. I like the way it flies. I like the way that it, just gives you this dynamic feel that you can't get with a DJI drone, and gives you some different or alternate camera views. Like if you want to do a bank turn and dive on it, I love all that. But yeah, it's a little bit of a butt clincher when you get into a situation because you know how much it costs, and that may kind of hinder you from doing something, I guess, a little bit more aggressive. Maybe a pro, maybe a con. I'm sure once I get used to flying this thing and I'm more confident in where I'm flying, like I would never go out and fly this thing in a situation where I don't know my lines. I don't know if there's any branches or trees there. I would never fly that like just right out of the box or right out of the bag and just go rip around on it. But after getting used to certain areas or certain, I guess, conditions or wherever I'm flying, yeah, I'm sure that I will try to push this thing a little bit. So with that said, yeah, I might invest in the DJI Refresh, which I don't often do because I don't often crash. I told you I don't fly super aggressively. I like cinematics more than doing aggressive maneuvers trying to shoot through gaps or shoot through a window. But yeah, there is a potential for this. The longer that you fly it, you're probably going to crash it. It is what it is. It's probably not going to be if, it's probably going to be when. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out there to you real quick and give you a quick follow-up on this thing. I know I've been on Facebook kind of going through all of the threads looking for things that have popped up so that I didn't make mistakes on my first flight with it. And I wanted to pass those things on to you. Yes, definitely get this out of the box and go through the settings. Make sure that you turn off some of those autonomous features like the assisted turning feature, putting your acro mode or your manual mode into attitude assist first. And if you can, before you go out and do a lot of crazy aggressive flying, go through your expo and play with it a little bit and set it up to the way that you like feeling it. And also keep in mind that when you let off the sticks, it is going to freak out on you a little bit in certain modes. And it's not going to cause you to crash, because actually a freak out could cause you to crash when you think it's going to freak out on you. And then you start playing around with the sticks and actually push it into a tree or something. But that's all I wanted to say for now. Seeing how this flies with two sticks, I don't even know what I'm going to expect when I take the little gimbal remote out of the box and try it with that. So please, like I said, if you can, go over and like Big Ball FPV on Facebook, and I'll talk to you later.